On this episode of 2.5 Geeks, we're going to talk about some brand new SanDisk SSDs, the Asus G751 gaming notebook with Maxwell, the Amazon Fire HD7 tablet, the Alienware Area 51 super funky gaming system, and a whole lot more.
It rocked in the benchmarks.
We're going to up the ante a little bit.
Processing power, I kind of understand this.
So, all right, welcome back to 2.5 Geeks. I'm with my buddy and partner, Dave Altavilla. How you doing over there, Dave?
Doing great today. Good to be back on the silver screen here, although we are, once again, without the half geek. So, by the way, if anybody is interested and you have the geek cred and have some experience in podcasting, we might entertain a new half geek because we've been without one here and there. So, keep that in mind, you faithful viewers. If there's somebody out there with some mad skills that would like to join us, maybe we'll partner up with you. So drop us a line. How's that?
Yes, that's great. What he said. So I think I'll kick things off today. Just recently, I reviewed the relatively new SanDisk Extreme Pro solid state drives. And SanDisk is most likely a company you've heard of. You maybe don't think of them when you think of extreme high performance solid state drive for PCs. But you should. So the Extreme Pro series is the follow-on to the Extreme 2 series that came out last year. Now, these new drives use a similar Marvell controller, and they also use similar SanDisk NAND, a slightly newer revision of the NAND flash memory. But the firmware has been tweaked, and their proprietary N-cache technology has been tweaked to improve overall performance and to improve consistency. So I took a look at 3 different SATA drives. They're all 2.5-inch drives from the outside. They all look exactly the same. There was a 240 gig model, a 480 gig model, and a 960 gig model. Now, across the whole lineup, the drives perform similarly. The 480 and 960 are really close in terms of specs. SanDisk rates them at 550 megabyte per second writes and 515 megabyte per second reads. The 240 gig is slightly faster in terms of writes. It's rated for 520 megabytes a second. Now, overall, it turned out to be a couple of excellent drives. If I compared them to some of Intel's best, Samsung's relatively new 850 Pro, another great solid state drive. And overall performance was really strong. It didn't lead the pack across the board in any one particular category, but strong performance overall. And in the all-important small file transfers, so 4K transfers, these drives rocked. They were right up there with the Samsung drives. Like, for example, if you were to look at our ADO benchmarks, you'd see the SanDisk drives well ahead of the Intel drive with small file transfers. And those rapid small file transfers, especially the 4K transfers, are what you sort of feel when you're using Windows on a day-to-day basis. So overall, some pretty strong drives. I'm just jumping to the end here to get some pricing. And despite some pretty strong performance, pricing of the drives is competitive. The 240 gig drive was hovering around $160 when the article went up. The 240 gig drive was around $295. And the big 960 gig drive was only $499, so competitive pricing. And one last quick point, 10-year warranty on these guys. So endurance is competitive with other, enthusiast class drives, but 10-year warranty, that's a class-leading warranty on a drive like this.
Yeah, that's an excellent warranty. And what occurred to me, I was just looking through the benchmark numbers. It's a solid drive. It's right in sort of in with the pack. But I don't know if you have any insight in how these drives perform over sort of life expectancy. So, one of the things we've seen, certainly Samsung puts out some drives that really rip up benchmarks. But depending on the model, I think there were a couple of issues along the way where Samsung drives, after they get a little bit dirty, don't always maintain their performance curve like they do when they're fresh and clean out of the box. What are your thoughts about this product, about the SanDisk product in that regard?
That's actually one of SanDisk's strengths, and one of the things they tweaked with this firmware that is consistency and performance, especially as the drive gets full and dirty. So in that regard, the firmware has been tweaked, so that's good. It's also got idle garbage collection, which some drives don't. This drive does have idle garbage collection, so when your PC is just sitting idle, it will clean up the drive. Also has trim support, which every drive should have at this point. But their N-cache technology also helps improve write performance over the long run because it basically simulates SLC writes. So it's constantly reconfiguring that NAND to optimize performance, regardless of how full it is. Now, if you completely fill it up like any SSD, performance is going to go down, but consistency is one of the strong points here.
What are they doing with N-cache? Is that a chunk of SLC or SRAM cache? DRAM cache?
The drive is all MLC NAND, but it can on the fly dynamically configure part of the MLC basically as SLC. So for high-speed writes, they call it their N-cache technology. It writes like an SLC cache, and then during idle times or when doing maintenance, it will copy back to the MLC.
Gotcha. Boy, I tell you what's impressive to me is how SSDs are still coming down the price curve. It's really nice to see, to the point where now they're definitely approachable for the average mainstream user as at least a boot drive and an OS volume. Certainly, they're a really good option for notebooks. And, this drive, the 240 gig variant, sort of what I would think the mainstream would be at, $160 for a 240 gig SSD. That's a pretty good buy.
Yeah, if you're building a system or upgrading a system, SSDs remain one of the best upgrades for perceptible performance improvements. If you switch from a hard drive to an SSD for your boot volume and your OS and your most commonly used apps, you really feel that upgrade. And pricing's to the point now where just about everybody should be considering an SSD.
Yeah. And certainly, as I mentioned with notebooks, and we actually took a look at a really nice gaming notebook this month, and I should say at the end of October, Asus G751 gaming laptop with mobile Maxwell done right. That's NVIDIA's latest graphics technology in the mobile variant. They certainly had a big launch with their Maxwell desktop technology. This is the mobile release. And indeed, this notebook has an SSD. It has a couple of SSDs, believe it or not, well, you can configure a couple of SSDs in RAID 0. I think ours came with a 256 gig SSD, PCI Express SSD. But you can configure a RAID 0 setup if you want, and it also comes with a 1 terabyte hard drive for bulk storage. But sort of the big hook that we were interested in with this machine that sort of piqued our interest first was the fact that NVIDIA's GeForce GTX 980M has come to market, and this machine is one of the first we've gotten in to test and see how it performed. It is driven initially, or I should say the core, the heart of the machine is an Intel Core i7 4710 HQ quad core that turbos up to 3.5 gigahertz. But the GeForce GTX 980M certainly drives the pixels when it comes to gaming and graphics. And this is your basic, no compromise, heavy duty gaming notebook. It weighs in something north of 8 pounds. So you're not going to go running around airports like, crazy with this thing in your bag, unless you've been, working out. But it certainly brings some game and has a nice 17-inch screen, 1920 by 1080. Really nice, actually, display. We were impressed with that. And the performance in virtually all of the benchmarks we've taken a look at, as the live stream chirps a commercial in my ear. Sorry about that. all the benchmarks we took a look at in graphics and gaming, this thing really just put out the best numbers we've seen in any single mobile graphics chip to date. It is the fastest single, GPU setup. Certainly you could configure dual GPUs and SLI in notebooks these days. They have that. But for single GPUs, this is the fastest in the market currently. Whether you talk about things like, standard, synthetic benchmarks like 3D Mark Firestrike, or some older game engines like Batman, Arkham Origins, and BioShock, to, some of the latest, bleeding edge DX11 stuff like, Metro Last Light. This notebook and the graphics subsystem in it, the GeForce GTX 980M, really just put out the frame rates and took a a beating to just about everything we've compared it to date. So good stuff there. What also really impressed me, and what I didn't sort of expect. I mean, when you get these machines in, a lot of times they're so over the top, they're so big, they're so clunky. They're loud because you've got some really high-end processors and really high-end graphics chips on board. This machine had a really nice balance for a gaming notebook. Like I said, just north of 8 pounds, so it's still heavy, no question about it, but not bad. And just built really well, really sleek designs. The cooling system on board was very quiet, even under full load with all the graphics quality turned up and something like Metro Last Light, which is a GPU crusher of a benchmark. This machine, under full load and stress, was very quiet. And so I was just impressed very much by Asus's ability to design a quality gaming notebook that doesn't push the envelope of its thermal capabilities and deliver some of the best performance I've seen in a gaming notebook to date. Pretty good stuff, huh, Marco?
Yeah, when I first saw that machine, the first thing that struck me was, wow, the specs are great, but it's not this big, gaudy, over-the-top gaming notebook. Some of the companies that make products for gamers, they tend to overdo the styling because they think all gamers want, elaborate lights and crazy, funky graphics on the top. This is one of those times where Asus, took this really nice conservative approach to the design, and it really worked out. It's just a beautiful machine. So since you messed with it and you got to test it all, as you used it, does it feel like the premium device that the specs sort of imply here? You have killer graphics, killer storage, killer processor, nice looks. But as you're using it, sometimes the shots on screen look really good, and then you touch and feel it, and things aren't quite as nice. How was it in your hand to actually play with it?
Yeah, it was just as nice as it looks. I mean, honestly, the design is beautiful in terms of, it's very sporty. It has this sort of sports car, red painted grille in the back, which is where the exhaust ports are for the fans in the system. It has dual sort of squirrel cage fans in there that are actually very quiet, and so they did a really nice job trimming it up, and it's solid. I mean, like, to feel this thing in your hand, the top of the lid has this sort of strapped brushed aluminum assembly that sort of straps over the hinge and everything on the top. I don't know if we can get another shot of that on camera, but it's just really well built. And then when you flip the lid, yeah, so there's a look at it right there. That whole lid assembly is just super tight, super well done, very solid. And then when you flip the lid and you put your hands down on the keyboard and you actually start using this thing, it is just built quality. The keyboard is top notch. It's got a really nice backlit keyboard. If you're not big on red, maybe that's an issue because it is lit up, backlit, sort of this subdued red color. It's not a bright fire engine scream in your face red, but it's done really well. Trackpad is really nice, very responsive, multi-touch trackpad. The display, 1920 by 1080 display, certainly for a 17-inch display, could be a lot higher res. I mean, they're putting out 3 and 4K displays on laptops now. I personally am not of the opinion that you need that kind of resolution on a 17-inch panel, or even certainly anything below that in a notebook. I'm not big on super high res displays in notebooks. I think 1080 is pretty good, pretty much the sweet spot. And then you got to remember, you're not going to be gaming much north of 1080 with a single mobile GPU in a notebook anyway. So what this machine represented to me was a really nice balance of performance, build quality, and just set up with the right hardware such that you can game at native res on the panel with all the dials turned up, and this thing handles it. And the price isn't bad either. There's gaming laptops from guys like Alienware and others that are just way over the top. This thing starts at $17.99. Excuse me, if you want to, sort of a more base config. I want to say that's with a 970M, not the top end GPU, but still a very, strong GeForce 970M, GTX 970. You can really dial this thing down, and starting at $17.99, as tested, it was $2,500. But you're talking about super high end graphics. You're talking about a 256 gig PCI Express SSD as well as a 1 terabyte hard drive. You're talking about 24 gigs of DDR3 1600 memory and a quad core, 3.5 gigahertz Core i7 Haswell based processor. So it's about as dialed up as it gets in terms of notebooks for $2,500. I think it's a good deal. If you want to tone things down a little bit, you can get into them starting at $17.99. And got to hand it to Asus and NVIDIA for putting together some pretty good mobile chops with this one.
Yeah, I agree. That thing is just super nice. So I think we're going to continue on the mobile vein here, but go in completely the other direction. We just took a look at the, one of Amazon's refreshed Fire tablets. We took a look at the Fire HD7, the 2014 edition. Now, this is one of the newest tablets in Amazon's, refreshed line of tablets. And the first thing you'll notice is they've dropped Kindle from the name. So it's just the Fire HD7 here. Now, this guy's kind of interesting for a few reasons. So let me just run some specs quick. It's powered by a quad-core MTK 8135 SoC with PowerVR G6200 series graphics. It's got a gig of RAM, 8 or 16 gigs of storage, but Amazon gives you unlimited cloud storage with it as well. You've got 802.11 BGN Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. As the name implies, it's a 7-inch screen with a 1280 by 800 resolution. And, it has everything you'd expect from a 7-inch tablet. Now, the two kind of kickers here is it's super cheap. The basic Fire HD7 starts at $139 with special offers, or goes up to $154 without the special offers. And the 16 gig model is either $149 or $174, depending on if you opt to accept the special offers in there. And it's it's running Amazon's Fire OS 4, codenamed Sangria. So it's based on Android, but Amazon does tons of customization to the point where you don't even have access to the Google Play Store. If you want to install apps from Google Play, you have to do some hackery here and, sideload them yourself. You get the apps from Amazon's App Store. Now, there's still lots of stuff there, but there's some glaring omissions, like Dropbox, for example, you can't get in the Amazon store right now. So overall, the machine it's pretty nice. The build quality is good. The back cover doesn't have that sort of rubberized texture finish like previous models. It's a hard plastic, but it's available in 5 different colors. And Paul, who reviewed this for us, wasn't particularly fond of the feel of the plastic. It doesn't give the device that premium feel of, say an iPad or some of the higher end Android tablets, or even a Surface. But again, keep in mind, we're talking $139 tablet with a quad core and a gig of RAM. So overall performance is kind of mixed in terms of, system performance and web browsing. It was sort of middling performance, maybe slightly behind the middle of the pack. And in terms of graphics performance, though, performance was definitely behind some of the more recently released tablets. It did okay in 3D Mark, did okay in GFX Bench, but generally trailed the other tablets we put it up against. Now, with that said, if you're just running basic games on this thing, if you're a Candy Crush player or a Angry Birds player, no problem. But if you want to show off the graphics capabilities and run, Fire Strike and show somebody what your little tablet can do, probably not the machine to do it with. So what do you think of this thing, Dave?
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I'm underwhelmed by it. I think Paul was underwhelmed by it on our team as well. I understand it's a $139 tablet. I totally get that, and there's definitely a ton of market potential for low cost 7 and 8 inch slates. I mean, that's just You know, it goes without saying they're hitting the price point. There's certainly, it's not going to be super premium anyways. And we tend to be a little snobby about our hardware around here. So maybe there's a little bit of that going on. But the flip side of that is you think about what Amazon does with the Fire OS, their modified, heavily modified version of Android that doesn't have Google Play access, that absolutely at every turn channels the user to Amazon, right? You know, come get some media, on your tablet, sign up for services at Amazon. And that's the hook with these machines. I mean, let's be honest. Amazon is putting these tablets out there for $139. They're not making a lot of money on them. It's not a big profit center. They make money on users signing up and using Amazon services and buying Amazon product based, sold product via the Amazon store or what have you. That's a primary revenue stream for this type of product. So what they should do, and what I think they've done in the past, is really differentiate. And what they tried to do with the Fire Phone, which kind of unfortunately fell on its face a little bit. What they really should keep doing is trying to innovate and try and bring something special with their product. If they're going to, sort of channel the user experience, limit the user experience, if you will, to an Amazon ecosystem, focused presentation. And so, that's where I struggle with this product. If you're going to sell a cheap tablet, great, appreciate that, but give us something a little bit more unique, a little bit more innovative that doesn't just say, okay, here's another $140 tablet. There's other devices out there that can hit this price point as well. There's plenty of even cheap Intel based Android slates out there in the $150 to $160 range. Yeah, I don't know. It's decent, and certainly if you're already a big Amazon Prime member, if you got an Amazon Prime membership and you're into their services now, it's a great buy. Other than that, I don't know if it pulls you, is enough to attract me or others away from the current Android ecosystem as it exists today. Certainly.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Just to play devil's advocate here, the one cool thing, or not the one cool thing, something that's cool about what Amazon does here. So, I also prefer, say, a pure Android experience. I don't want to have limited access to apps and things like that. But at this price point, with Amazon's level of support and an app store filled with apps are going to work right, again, and if you're already plugged into Amazon's ecosystem, if you're a Prime member, it's kind of a really good entry point for somebody who hasn't had a tablet and maybe they want something that they're going to keep on their coffee table and have access to their media that's available in Amazon Prime, and an easy way to buy stuff from Amazon sitting on the couch. I totally agree with everything you said, but I think there is some appeal there because of Amazon's level of support and kind of what they do with the device.
Yeah, you absolutely made an excellent point, and I was completely overlooking that. That is absolutely a very good selling point to this tablet. If you have, grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, whoever, that is not tech savvy in your family, and just don't want to imply that older folks are, because certainly there's a lot of tech savvy older folks out there. Maybe I'm one of them. But yeah, the Mayday button, I got to hand it to Amazon, and that's a huge beneficial service. When somebody gets screwed up, how many times have you been called, Marco, right, to bail a family member out who's totally hosed up their machine, right?
I think that's the bane of every computer guy's existence is being able to fix family and friends' computers. It's a constant barrage of help.
Yeah, amen, man. So that's an excellent point, and having that feature and having that service, like we've tested multiple Amazon devices here, and I've fired that thing up, on the test bench in the studio when we're shooting video of it, and somebody pops right on, a live person on screen. That's impressive and good stuff, and you got to hand it to Amazon for that for sure. And yes, it does simplify, the whole Fire OS does sort of simplify the experience. And with the Mayday button there, yeah, it's a good sort of no-brainer tablet, if you will.
Yeah,
good point.
So now let's get completely nuts and tell everybody what you checked out from Alienware.
Yeah, it is completely nuts. The thing is, I mean, when you first look at it, you kind of, if you're not open-minded about computers, you're like, what the heck is that? So this is the Alienware Area 51, what I called Triad Tri-SLI GTX 980 and Haswell E empowered gaming desktop. And Triad is the chassis design actually that Alienware sort of coined around the mechanical design of it. It is a custom built case by Alienware. This is the Area 51. It's their latest iteration of the Area 51. There's been multiple versions of Area 51 desktops over the years. We've checked out virtually every one of them. And this is by far the most innovative design I've seen certainly in an Alienware product. And they've got some pretty outlandish designs over the years, right? It's also one of the most unique and innovative designs I've seen in a PC chassis, a computer case, in a long time, just the case itself. The design is made such that it's, cut on a 45-degree angle on front and back. And then the bottom is sort of standard depth and width, standard ATX style chassis. We're one of only 2 or 3 publications in the US right now that had a pre-production prototype version of this thing. And the front, the nice thing about it is with that angled front panel, all the I/O and the slot load CD, DVD, ROM drive is facing up at the user, which is great. If it's sitting on the floor at your desk, it's pointing everything up at you. And in the back, that 45-degree angle on the rear of the chassis offers a natural air gap away from, say, a wall or perhaps even, a rear wall of your desk if it's underneath your desk. Although, frankly, I'm not sure I'd want to hide the thing completely under my desk. It's really cool looking, I think. So that 45-degree angle on the rear lets all that warm air rise up in the back. And so cool air comes in from the front, drawn in with some front-mounted case fans, and then exhausted out the back, and it rises up on that angle out the backside. You can see right there's a little animation that Alienware put together we have in the review. So the natural airflow is excellent. You open up the side panel, which, by the way, is released with a very simple lever mechanism that releases the 2 side panels. And you have access to a full standard, I want to underscore that, standard component setup inside. There is some a little bit of customization on retaining brackets for the graphics cards. The rear of the graphics cards have a custom metal bracket that slides and then locks into place. But that's really for shipment more than anything. The graphics cards themselves, you could pull out one of the graphics cards that are sent from Alienware and replace it with any standard graphics card, and it's going to stay in there no problem in the slot. It doesn't need that rear bracket. But if you want to ship this thing around, they recommend having that locking mechanism in the back of the card. But yeah, so standard motherboard, standard power supply, standard drives, all locked into different slots in their respective cases inside this triangular shaped chassis. And the thermals work really well. We actually got one decked out with none other than a Core i7-5930K, Haswell E, 6-core chip, 3.5 gigahertz 6-core chip, 16 gig of DDR3 RAM, and 3 GeForce GTX 980 top-end graphics cards in Tri-SLI. This thing ate up benchmarks, as you can imagine. It's one of the fastest desktops we've ever tested. Tri-SLI, I think, has some diminishing returns. We can talk about that. I think dual SLI is, 2-card SLI is the sweet spot. Yeah, it performs really well, runs super cool, and very quiet. And it's very serviceable. It's very user accessible as well. I think, personally, finally, I also think it looks great too. This is definitely something that's personal preference. You may not agree that this spacey looking triangular thing is attractive. I think it looks slick. What do you think, Marco?
Yeah, I gotta admit, when Alienware first made the announcement and released some of the publicity photos, I was looking at it going, what the heck is that thing? And it just looked monstrous in the photos. But then I got to see it in person, and it's actually, maybe a little smaller than a full tower. So it's not
Yeah.
this
Yep.
big giant monster that the photos made it look like. The base is about the size of a full tower, and the way it angles up to the top just made sense when you saw it. If it's under your desk, you have easy access to ports and all the cooling benefits that you mentioned. And I think Alienware, in addition to making a custom chassis, which is a risk, they kind of go in a little bit of a different direction than some other gaming systems. There's not a ton of, let's say, external drive bays on the front. So you couldn't load this thing up with a bunch of crazy, water cooling reservoirs that you can see from the front, or wild fan controllers, or even optical drives. There's just a single optical drive slit on one side, and where the drives mount internally. In the stock configuration, you have room for 2.5-inch drives and 3.5-inch drives, if I'm remembering correctly. And of course, you could put 2.5-inch drives in the 3.5-inch bays, but you're not talking, the ability to have 12 drives in here, which some gaming system builders do. They brag that you could have, 12 SSDs and 8 hard drives if you wanted, which a tiny, tiny fraction of the market maybe wants to do. So I think Alienware made lots of cool decisions, and to see this thing in person, it was surprisingly nice. I went in there a little skeptical because the pictures had me wondering what the heck were they thinking. And then I saw it and heard it and played with it, and I'm like, wow, this thing's pretty cool.
So, John, I don't know if you can hit the second page of the article that shows the layout of this thing, and give the viewers give the folks a view of how this thing's built on the inside, so you can really appreciate how it's laid out. But page 2, if you hit the article, you can see how it's, everything is sort of, scroll down a little bit from there. That's the blowout of it. A little bit more. Yeah, there you go. So you can see everything's sort of tilted up at that 45-degree angle. You've got the cards all channeled up and directing that warm air out and away from the chassis. And then if you go to the back, there you can see that's all the drive bays. So you've got what, 3.5-inch standard bays, and then a 2.5-inch standard bay that will take a pair of SSDs as well. So it's very serviceable. Again, those side panels just pop off with a simple lever mechanism on the top of the case. You can just literally snap the lever up, and the panels just fold right down. It's really kind of neat and lift off. So it's really well built, really well organized. Personally, I think this is great for gamers. I would look at this thing. I wouldn't even have a problem if I was an IT guy and I was specifying out machines for workstation use, for putting this thing in a workstation environment. It's water cooled, it's quiet, and it's very powerful, and you can configure it certainly with a myriad of different components. Maybe you don't need to have Tri-SLI or whatever. But this is a really well-built, innovative design that works really well. Starting price is $16.99 for the absolute base config, and that certainly doesn't get you Tri-SLI or anything like that. But $16.99, it's a reasonable price for a high-end desktop with a very innovative chassis. And so, yeah, got to hand it to Alienware and the folks at Dell, Alienware, or the Alienware division of Dell, for building something that's really unique and something very different that we haven't seen anything like this ever. And it's really a cool machine. You can also, of course, tweak what they call alien effects lighting. So there's all like light pipes around the edge of the machine, as you can see there. All those pipes can be colored into different or set up for different colors, and almost a rainbow hue of different colors that you can select through Alien Effects software. So it's a really cool machine. It certainly got the bling effect with its wild good looks. I think good looks, and I think Marco agrees. But beyond just the form, it's got very good function as a result of that design and that form. So hats off to Alienware for putting out something pretty special there, we think.
Yeah, I agree. That's a pretty. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, you're gonna finish.
No, I was just gonna say, and you were leading into something else that has a lot of form, but who knows about function, and that's Apple stuff, right?
No, we're gonna switch to another Tri SLI sort of setup that Gigabyte just announced.
Oh,
So
that's
we
right.
haven't tested
Right.
this. Gigabyte literally just announced it yesterday. So it's something they're calling the GeForce GTX 980 Waterforce Tri SLI Killer Gaming Graphics Kit. So Gigabyte took three NVIDIA GeForce GTX 980 cards, put custom order blocks on there, linked everything to this giant radiator assembly with dedicated 120 millimeter radiators for each card. You know, all the tubing is running to this giant monstrosity that sits on top of your case. Tubing runs into a system, and you essentially get triple SLI out of the triple water cooled SLI out of this single kit, you know, that runs right into your system. So really, really wild setup. Now, again, we didn't get to test this. This was just announced, but we wanted you to see some of this crazy stuff that's coming down the pipe. And pricing wasn't released on this thing yet. So considering a GTX 980 is, you know, what, roughly $550 right now, you're looking at least, you know, $1,650 worth of GPUs. Plus you have all that custom water cooling going on there, all the industrial design. It's probably a $2,000 kit, maybe in that range. We're not sure yet. But if you're looking for absolutely an insane graphics setup, Gigabyte is really pushing the envelope here. What do you think about this thing?
Yeah, you know, I think it's pretty cool. I was impressed at how, you know, up on top the radiator then snakes down the liquid cooling, conductor, the tubing into a 3.5-inch bay in the front, and then that all loops in to get inside your case. A little custom 3.5-inch bay to feed in the tubing. I thought that was cool. It was very innovative way to get that piping in. What concerns me is like you'll see if you dig into the numbers in the Area 51 article, Tri SLI doesn't buy you 3x the graphics horsepower of a single card, or I should say, it does maybe give you that available horsepower, but it doesn't give you the frame rate of 3 times a single chip, a single graphics card, a single GTX 980 in this case. Dual card SLI does almost give you a double. Maybe it's like 80%, I think, in round numbers, Marco. But you go to three-way SLI, and the performance drops off dramatically. There's diminishing returns. You do get more performance. You know, it's something on the order of about 25%, I saw, in certain games. And certainly a game like Crysis 3, for example, we saw some higher frame rates with Tri SLI to the tune of about 25 to 30%, maybe for a higher frame rate. But that's the thing: is it worth having that third GPU for the performance you get, that extra $550 card? I think maybe this setup in a dual SLI would be kind of cool. That's my initial thought, but I applaud the build and the innovation. It's actually pretty cool. It just sits right on top there and keeps all those radiators out of your case and cools everything down nice and quietly, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need a ton of cooling for GTX 980. NVIDIA did a really nice job with the Maxwell GPUs on those cards. They're not really power hungry, and they work really well. I think what you get here is a monstrously powerful graphics setup that will be highly overclockable. And if you keep in mind, if you want to push this kind of thing, you need a ton of CPU horsepower and fast memory too. To get the best performance out of Tri SLI or even regular SLI, you need a fast CPU that can keep those cards fed with data and pumping out those frames. So in addition to spending huge coin on this graphics setup, you really need to put it into a super high-end system, which is kind of where it's going to go. Anybody buying this is probably going to have a high-end rig, but just something we wanted to mention, have you keep in mind.
Yeah, you're not going to be bellying up to one of these things unless you're hell bent on performance. So it's definitely a niche product to be sure, but again, innovative. Good to see Gigabyte stepping out there with something a little bit out of the box, or more than a little bit in this case. And speaking of which, let's stay on this trend and talk about a couple of news items. Go to the news bag here. with a couple of crazy things that sort of come up. Well, not crazy. One of them was just an opinion, but the first thing is kind of wild. Never thought I'd see it in my lifetime. We have Foodini, the 3D printer food replicator, was unveiled this past week, and this is just wild. Now, I'm a fan of 3D printing. I've actually played quite a bit with 3D printers. We actually did a 3D printer roundup here at HotHardware back in the early days of these sort of desktop, ready to go, what I would say consumer grade 3D printers that first hit the market. You know, guys like Solidoodle and Up and Cube 3D. You know, certainly the RepRap movement and all those guys that were, you know, the makers and the builders that were building their own 3D printers. You know, that's been going on for many years. But really, consumer level 3D printers are just now starting to get mainstream, and it's really beginning to explode. And it's amazing innovation. But what blows my mind is that they're actually considering printing food with a 3D printer, and they're pulling it off. And so the Foodini prints edible food. It actually uses these stainless steel capsules that are capable of printing a variety of dishes. You know, pizza. You know, you could print yourself a pizza. Now, the caveat currently is, you know, number one, you have to prepare the food to go into the capsule to print. And then when it's done printing, it needs to be cooked. But they are working already with partners to develop pre-made capsules with all natural. They, you know, the name of the company is Natural Machines that designed and built this Foodini printer. And supposedly all natural capsules are being developed with a 5-day shelf life. And pretty soon you'll be able to buy food capsules already pre-made. And then eventually they're actually going to come out with, reportedly, a version of it that will cook the food as well. So print your food and cook it, and then presto, here's your pepperoni pizza printed right on the spot for you and then cooked. Just amazing. Personally, I got a little bit of a problem with it, because I'm really particular what I put in my body, and I'm not real comfortable with something that's going to print and that I'm going to eat. But I mean, this is like Star Trek. The food replicator is almost here. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah. So,
you know,
speaking of Star Trek, Earl Grey tea, hot. All right, no, okay, stupid impression, but yeah, I think this
it would probably do it for you.
So it kind of, yeah, I don't think I'd necessarily want this in my home, but what it could sort of lead into is these fully automated restaurants with limited menus. You know, if this was on some sort of conveyor system and you wanted a quick meal, you go in, you pick your kind of pizza, it prints it, spits it into the oven, and then comes out for you. You know, that kind of would make more sense than having it in your home, because, you know, you got these pods. It's going to be really limited what you can do. You're not going to be able to fill it with 50 different ingredients. I don't know, you know, in the future, maybe they can pull that off. But yeah, for now, I'm with you. I'm just not completely sold on this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I ideally, I'd love to have my food, you know, if I had the time and the resources, I'd love to have my food growing in my backyard and I harvest it, or, you know, but, you know, I go to the grocery store like most people do, but I don't want to go. I'm not sure I'm ready to go that extra step about printing my food yet. I'm not sure I'm that lazy, but it could happen.
Yeah, it's like, instead of paper jams, it's like, oh no, pizza jam. It's like, oh, screw this.
Right, but you know, it's funny. You hit the nail on the head. You mentioned exactly what they're initially, I think, targeting this thing for, which is more professional kitchen use. It's $1,000 device, which isn't certainly out of the realm of what could be considered a consumer product. But yeah, I think the initial interest is professional kitchen use, or a sort of, you know, commercial level product. But fascinating stuff and just amazing. You know, it seems like, you know, you and I, we've been doing this tech thing. I mean, HotHardware has been on the net since, I don't know, for 15 years now, anyways, right? Since the internet was like string in a tin cup. And it seems like every few years, you and I mean, every year we see stuff that's impressive and we're wowed. But every once in a while, every few years, something comes out and it's like, oh my God. It's like, how is, sci-fi becoming reality so quickly, it seems sometimes. It's
Yeah,
just wild.
yeah, I agree. Some pretty cool stuff.
Great place to
Now
work if you can do it, right?
exactly. Yeah. So let's segue into just a quick little announcement. As if you're a regular viewer, you know we give away tons of stuff at Hot Hardware. We recently announced the winners of our Halloween Spooktacular. So we gave away a 8-core liquid-cooled edition AMD FX 9950 processor with a matching Gigabyte GA990FX motherboard. And 2 lucky readers, K. Owen and Star White, won the kits. So they will be shipping shortly. We just wanted to let you know that, yes, we give this stuff away. We are the real deal. All you got to do is come by the site, contribute, make some friends, and chat it up in our news and article channels. So come by, check out our giveaways. Nothing to announce yet in our next giveaway, but hopefully soon. Thanksgiving's coming, and it's the perfect time to announce another giveaway.
With this time of year, last couple of years, we've had partners help us out with tablets for good girl and boy geeks, right? So
exactly.
During the holidays. So maybe we can rustle up some tablets, talk to some of the partners out there and see if we can get a few tablets to give away. We always have a sweepstakes going at hothardware.com. Yes, you can find us. That's the main URL where all the action is for us, hothardware.com. If you're into Facebook and Twitter and all the social places, we are facebook.com/hothardware, twitter.com/hothardware. And of course, you're probably going to watch this either on GFQ or the GFQ network. Guys from Queens, great place, by the way. Thanks for helping us out with production here, guys. But also, you might be viewing this at YouTube, and it's youtube.com/hothardwarevids. So subscribe, hit that button, like this video, because that helps us out a lot. Certainly get some traction on the YouTubes. And yeah, we like to have you with us. We try and shoot this every week. We try and shoot on Wednesdays, and we usually publish sometime on Thursday or Friday. And we are trying to also get back another half geek to join us in our usual 3-way format. That's typically how we roll. But regardless, we will prevail, and we will keep being geeks that we are, even if we're only 2 of them. And I'm Dave Altavilla, and that was Marco Chiappetta, and thanks for stopping by.